I don't know. I feel like dudes is confident. I mean, there's a lot of guys that played a lot of football in here. I think there's confidence there, but it might not be confidence in something else. So
They're not taking a timeout. Now, I don't understand that with it. That makes no sense to me. Nothing on that final series of the Saints made sense to me.
That's about the case with almost every single game head coach Dennis Allen has coached. But I would like to thank Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers, hence the helmet, for the services they provided today by beating the New Orleans Saints on their 7th game losing streak. And hopefully it results in Dennis Allen getting fired. Because now, for the first time since 1999, the Saints have lost 7 games in a row. I wasn't even alive by then. I was 5 years away from even being born the last time the Saints had lost 7 games in a row. This shit is so sad that last week after the Broncos beat the Panthers, Sean Payton said the defense had a good game, but that's not a good team or a good offense to be proud of basically beating. And now the Saints, led by defensive coordinator, head coach Dennis Allen, just lost after their defense folded at the end of the game. But on the bright side, with the Panthers beating the Saints today, the Saints now sit with the 2nd overall pick in the NFL draft. Alright, I gotta take this off, man. It's getting hot. And for any of those who are wondering why I have a Panthers helmet, my brother went as Christian McCaffrey one year for Halloween. So, if you're wondering why, hopefully that answers your questions. We got a lot to talk about today after the Saints just lost to the Carolina Panthers. We got to talk about the game. We got to talk about Dennis Allen and his future. Will he actually be fired? What is next? We got tweets from Michael Thomas, tweets from Lonnie Johnson, Colin Saunders, Cam Jordan has a breakdown. Derek Carr is rusty. He sucks. Some updates and news about Chris Olave. And I'm sure there's a lot more stuff we got to go over, and I'm not going to get into depth about all of this stuff today, because chances are I'll do a Michael Thomas video tomorrow, and a Lonnie Johnson video Wednesday, and a Chris Olave update video Tuesday, or something like that. But we will briefly go over it because we got a lot to talk about. And I don't want this video getting basically over 20 minutes. I like to keep my videos relatively short under that time frame. So for some of these topics, I'll make it their own separate video for any of those who would be wondering why I'm keeping it short. I'm going to have some of this stuff be a little bit shorter so we can talk about it more in depth throughout the week and have it be its own video. All right, that's about it. Enough's enough. Let's talk about the game. And I want to get this video out, so we won't even play an ad. We're not going to play an ad. We'll just get straight into it. First off, post-game, Cameron Jordan did not even go straight to the locker room. He looked like he was in tears, or the way he was talking, it sounded like he was in tears, very upset. Derek Carr went to go get him. Then Alvin Kamara gave him a hug. Players were asking if he's okay. The PR managers and all of them were asking if everything's all right. Cam Jordan was like, no, I'm not all right. He looks very upset and needed to get his emotions together. I don't blame him. And you know it's bad when Cameron Jordan, the most positive guy ever on the whole team at least, is tweeting out very sad tweets, basically accepting the fact that the team is terrible. And the reason why the Saints are terrible is because head coach Dennis Allen is a generational loser. What has he done to our team, our city, and our franchise? Let's talk about him. First things first, Bryce Young cooked up his defense. Defensive mastermind Dennis Allen could not stop Bryce Young from cooking his defense today. And by cooking, I mean Bryce Young cooked. For Bryce Young, he cooked us. This is not like, oh, Mahomes depleted the defense. No, for Bryce Young and his talent level in this team, they picked the Saints defense apart. He had some really nice passes over the middle. He had a really good throw to Xavier Legette, which resulted in interception. He had some passes that were dropped. Bryce Young looked like a guy who was a #1 overall pick. And that seems to be the story with the Saints. Whenever they play a team, some player who's been struggling always has their bounce back game. Sean Tucker for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. For the Denver Broncos, it was the running game. For the Los Angeles Chargers, it was about everybody who was cooking up. And then now the Panthers, Bryce Young, who has been struggling his whole career, could have possibly had one of the best games of his NFL career today versus the Saints. Defense led by head coach Dennis Allen, the defensive mastermind. Not only was the coverage an issue, but once again, just as it's been all season, missed tackles were an issue. We had Panthers rookie tight end Jatavion Saunders hurdle a guy so badly that it worked out good. That was a missed tackle. There was also missed tackles on a Chuba Hubbard play. There was also missed tackles on some other plays. I can't remember, but when I put the B-roll in, you guys should be seeing a lot of missed tackles. It's just the same issues with this team every single week. No improvement, no nothing. And to make it worse, these are the same issues the Saints had when Dennis Allen first took over as the Saints head coach in 2022. They had issues with penalties. They had issues with fumbling, which hasn't been the case this year, but they also had issues with tackling, issues with communication, issues with attention to detail, and it's the same issues 3 years in. At one point, is enough for Mickey Loomis and Gail Benson, who just continue to sit back and look beyond the results? Well, the results are your head coach has more than double the amount of losses than he does wins, and your quarterback isn't very good. And your team isn't very good. You don't draft well, you're in salary cap hell because you refuse to rebuild, and you're keeping around a guy who knows nothing but losing with players who know nothing but losing. I thought the pressure and the defensive line play overall for the Saints was okay. Like, playing against the Panthers, it was bad. But if you're looking overall, just like how they did get some pressures on Bryce Young. They did get only, though, 1 sack, and that's not okay. Brian Brzee had some nice plays. Chase Young had some nice plays. They also had a sack on a 2-point play. But for a team like the Panthers, you should be getting more than 1 sack. And the Saints simply wasn't. So it was meh, but for the team they were playing in the context of the situation, it was bad. Now, some of you may be saying, whoa, Cash, the defense was getting cooked because they had 0 corners. Alontae Taylor was the only healthy corner from like week 1. Shamar Jean-Charles got his first start. Trey Herndon was signed earlier this week. Ugo was in the slot. Yes, I understand that the corners were injured. But at the same time, not once in this game did I feel like, oh man, I wish we had Marshawn Lattimore. Oh man, I wish we had Paulson Adebo. Oh man, I wish we had Kool-Aid McKinstry out there. It wasn't the corners who were getting beat. It wasn't the corners who were getting cooked. It was Bryce Young going over the middle in the zones against the starting linebackers and Demario Davis and Pete Warner, the safeties in Jordan Howden and Tyrann Mathieu. It wasn't, to me, the corners who were giving up a whole bunch of plays that led to the Saints losing. It was the lack of ability for the starters in the middle of the field to stop Bryce Young. And it's not like the Saints were playing a Panthers team that had Steve Smith or anything. They traded away their best receiver earlier this week. Their second best receiver is hurt, Xavier Legette. The Saints got an interception because of a dropped pass from him and a great play from Shamar Jean-Charles. I did not once think, man, the Saints are losing this game, or they lost this game because they didn't have Marshawn Lattimore, Kool-Aid, or Paulson Adebo. No. They lost this game because Dennis Allen was not able to scheme his way to beat Bryce Young, a team that they beat 47-10 just at the start of the season. And on top of that, it wasn't like the Panthers were running all over the Saints either. Like, they had a few nice runs and a few nice moments in the run game, but the Saints really didn't give up any huge running game. It's not like the running game beat the Saints. Like, they allow like 3 yards to carry. Like, that's not terrible. They just find ways to lose because their head coach finds ways to lose. And to make things worse, just as they always do, a Dennis Allen-led defense folded when they needed them most at the end of the game to help win, which has been the case looking back basically since Dennis Allen has taken over as the Saints defensive coordinator. Anytime Dennis Allen's defense needs to make a play, they simply don't. And here's a crazy stat. The Saints outgained the Panthers by 150 yards, ran for 150 yards more, and won the turnover battle. And over the last 20 years, teams had gone 275-0 with that formula. Today was the first time a team lost with that. Absolutely insane. Dennis Allen's defense, ladies and gentlemen. Let's all give a round of applause to... And we even had a former Saints player, Lonnie Johnson, who signed with the Panthers earlier this offseason, tweeted out, the first thing he tweeted out after the game was, man, Dennis Allen's about to be hired in Denver, and put the laughing emoji. He better. Dennis Allen better be unemployed by this time tomorrow, and if he's not, I don't know what to say. It does not get worse than this. This is the worst team in football. That's just the defense. Why don't we talk about just outside of the defensive game planning for Dennis Allen? How about In the second half, he wasted 2 timeouts, and there's still 22 minutes left of football. One of those timeouts he used because there's 12 men on the field for the defense, so he's calling a timeout. I like that. And after the timeout, there's still 12 men on the field. How does that happen? You call timeout to prevent that, and you still have the same issues. Someone ran off the field eventually, but how does that happen? How about before halftime, not using your timeouts, running meaningless plays, almost getting players injured, could have got players injured, calling a timeout with 2 seconds left, got a first down on the first play, didn't call a timeout. Even the commentators were absolutely confused with what was happening, as most of us are when we watch a Dennis Allen-led team play football.
They're not taking a timeout. Now, I don't understand that. That makes no sense to me. Nothing on that final series of the Saints made sense to me.
How about on 4th down and 1 with the game on the line, about midfield, 6 minutes left in the game. You're 2-7 playing the worst team in football, and Dennis Allen decides to punt. Plays not to lose as opposed to win. At that point, the Saints have been averaging 5 yards a carry, and Taysom Hill had looked unstoppable, and yet they decided to punt the ball. Dennis Allen, I don't know if I can say it, but he's a cat. He's another word for a cat. Or how about all of the penalties the Saints had, all the holding penalties on first downs? They had 3 holding penalties on their last 2 possessions. Penalties setting them back, face mask penalties. This team has 0 attention to detail and 0 discipline. That's just Dennis Allen-led team for you. But Mickey Loomis and the Saints are going to continue to look past results. And how about post-game? He essentially threw Derek Carr under the bus by saying that their goal was to get the ball to Juwan Johnson on an option route on that 4th down, in which Derek Carr threw a fade ball to the 5th string wide receiver, Cedric Wilson. 1, and this will transition us from the head coach to the offense. 1, that 4th down play call sucked. Like, why do you only have 1 route that's supposed to be like at the sticks? 2, why is Derek Carr throwing the ball 30 yards downfield on a fade route to your 5th string wide receiver? And 3, are we at 3? Dennis Allen has officially reached his last straw. He threw his boy Derek Carr under the bus for the read that he made. Now let's talk about the day that Derek Carr had. It was absolutely terrible, and it got started off terrible. He threw a hospital ball to Chris Olave, knocked him out cold, and he would leave the game on a stretcher with a concussion, had to be checked at a medical hospital. When under further evaluation, he was okay. The update here is that he flew back with the team. He returned back to the stadium after the game, and Derek Carr said him and Chris Olave talked about it after the game in the locker room. That's the first thing he did, so at least he checked up on him. But man, do hospital balls continue to be an issue for Derek Carr. I don't even want to talk about it, man. I don't want to look at the hit. I don't want to talk about the hit. It was brutal. Chris Olave, I was like, oh my gosh, he's not moving. Did he, like, what just happened? Glad he's okay. We got some updates from Olave saying he's good. His brother tweeted out some stuff as well. We'll get into that situation throughout the week. And we'll also talk about Chris Olave, like why he didn't wear a Guardian cap. He considered it for this game. And coincidentally, yet another concussion. That's like 5 in 3 years. It's crazy. So we'll cover all that during the week, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm still figuring that stuff out. And we also had Colin Saunders basically unhinging, going crazy on social media, debating with Lonnie Johnson which team is more ass, basically going unhinged. Dennis Allen has no control over this locker room. Colin Saunders, his tweets were unhinged. I love it though. They're hecka funny. We might talk about that later on this week. But at one point, does Mickey Loomis realize, hey, players on social media are calling this team ass. We should fire the head coach. Because he has no control over his team. We also had some Michael Thomas tweets talking about Derek Carr sucking. I'll put some of them up on the screen right here. You can read through them, but this is another thing that we'll probably talk about throughout the week. I don't want to go too in-depth. We're already at 15 minutes on this recording. I want to try and keep these videos shorter. So we'll have a video about the Michael Thomas tweets and Derek Carr and all that stuff likely tomorrow on Monday. Then later in the game, Derek Carr threw a hospital ball to Juwan Johnson. It was tipped, so maybe it wouldn't have been had it not got tipped. And then Juwan Johnson had to be evaluated for a concussion. Overall, though, outside of those 2 plays, if we're evaluating Derek Carr, he looked rusty. Did not look good. He looked inaccurate. He did not look like the guy who we saw versus the Chiefs. And the Chiefs game was terrible. He didn't throw the ball downfield at all. He looked like he was limited. It looked like he did not want to throw the ball downfield at all. And if that's the case, then why is he playing? We saw last season versus the Buccaneers, he wasn't able to go downfield, and he probably shouldn't have played. That feels like the same situation today. And if he couldn't throw the ball downfield, why was he playing? I can only think of one time he actually threw the ball down the field, and that was that 4th down. Honestly, I did not see anything that Derek Carr did today that we couldn't have had Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler probably do. He did not look good at all. And that's not me being a hater. That's legitimately the evaluation. Hospital balls, inaccurate, couldn't make plays, was limited. This is all stuff that you probably could have had the exact same result with Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler. And if you're DA, you probably would have preferred that, because now you have no excuses as to why you lost. You got your quarterback back, your defense outside the corners were healthy and they weren't an issue. This is a complete disaster. And I would like to congratulate Derek Carr on becoming the first quarterback in NFL history to lose to 31 different teams. He can become the first quarterback in NFL history to lose to all 32 teams if the Saints lose to the Raiders later on this season. And after the performance he put up today, he absolutely deserves it. I would also like to congratulate Derek Carr. This is the first time since week 1 he did not throw an interception in a game. So shout out to him. And in week 1, they also played the Panthers. Offensively, players who played well, shout out to Alvin Kamara, man. Alvin Kamara literally put the team on his back. It felt like Alvin Kamara versus the Panthers. That's literally what it felt like. Taysom Hill looked pretty good, had some nice runs. Foster Moreau had that nice touchdown catch, really nice play from him. Outside of that, I got nothing, man. I absolutely got nothing. So shout out to AK, Taysom, and Foster. I really can't think of anything else off the top of my head, but Alvin Kamara balled out. If there's a player of the game, he would be that player. Also, Clint Kubiak, the play calling, I didn't understand a lot of it. That first drive, the running game was working so well, and they get in the red zone and they stop running the ball. Same thing next drive. I don't get it. Clint Kubiak, he hasn't been as good as we all thought he'd be outside of the first 2 weeks. Take those first 2 weeks away, he has not been great. And if the play calling sucked today and was limited because Derek Carr was limited, well, that's on the team for putting a guy and a quarterback out there who shouldn't have been playing. All right, that's about it for the offense. I really got nothing else. There's nothing really receiver-wise to talk about. No one stepped up. MVS didn't do anything. Cedric Wilson didn't do anything. Mason Tipton didn't do anything. And let's move on to just one thing I forgot to mention about the defense earlier in the video. Shout out to Alontae Taylor, who had a really, really good game and was the best player on the field. Actually, no. Alvin Kamara and Alontae Taylor versus the Panthers is really what the storyline of this game is. Alontae Taylor balled out. That's the last thing I want to touch about the offense and defense. Now, as for special teams, the big reason why the Panthers were able to put up over 20 points, which for them is a lot of points, is because of field position. Matthew Hayball had a rough day, had some bad punts, and the Panthers were set up in good field position, had some nice situations, and Bryce Young was able to get them downfield and score some touchdowns. But I would like to shout out Matthew Hayball for this fake punt. Dude had wheels, got up to 20 miles per hour according to Next Gen Stats. And shout out to Darren Rizzi. This is a really nicely designed fake punt. Taysom Hill with the fake up the middle and Matthew Hayball went left. I like this play design. And hopefully Darren Rizzi eventually takes over as the interim head coach sometime this week. Blake Grupe had a nice day. I don't think he missed any kicks. So good for him. And as for the returners, there was nothing this week as there was last week where they're fair catching it at the 5. So I guess shout out to the returners for not sucking today. So where do things go from here? The Saints sit at 2-7 with the number 2 overall pick as I'm recording this in the draft. 7 straight losses for the first time since 1999. Will Dennis Allen be fired? I hope so. Will they do it? Mickey Loomis and Gil Benson love to look past results. I really don't count on it. But if you don't fire him after this, I don't know what will get him fired. And you're about to be at home playing your division rival, the Atlanta Falcons. And the stadium is going to be empty and probably filled with Falcon fans. Falcon fans taking over your stadium. Division rivals taking over your stadium because you won't fire Dennis Allen. That's just sad, man. That's just a sad reality. On the bright side, though, if they do not fire Dennis Allen, we'll just continue to lose and get a top pick in the draft. But if they do fire him and Rizzi takes over and they start winning games, then we get an okay pick. Like, if Dennis Allen is going to stay on the bright side, at least we're going to keep losing and get a good draft pick. But the worst part about that is, of course, the 1 year the Saints suck and get a good draft pick, there's no Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. I'm not a big fan of Shadur Sanders. Like, I'd take him if he's there. Cam Ward, I think, would need a lot of work. I wouldn't be opposed to him, but outside of those two, like, I don't know, just take BPA, best player available. But we'll see throughout the week if the Saints do make a move at head coach, if they do fire the generational loser they got. We'll make sure to have you guys all updated throughout the week. As you know, we already got a whole bunch of videos planned for you guys, so make sure you subscribe to my channel, Cash Sports, for more daily NFL content, up-to-date news, Saints updates, all that stuff. It's probably going to be a busy week, so stay tuned. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. The Saints may suck, but we got the content fire on this channel, so the Saints may suck, but we're stepping up. We're making sure you guys get some good content somewhere, so enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Have a good start to your week. Peace.